Hello, and welcome back to Healing Souls. Today, we are going to be talking about stop being a prisoner of the past. Yesterday, we talked about the power of today, how what we think today actually creates tomorrow, how what you're doing right now in this moment is a product of what you thought about yesterday or the day before. When you go to an appointment, it is because you made an appointment last week or last month or whatever. So today we're talking about how to stop being a prisoner of the past, because the past is what creates the future. And unless you're wildly successful, perfectly happy, thriving in the life of your dreams, what you're living through today is a product of the past. And if what you're looking for is change, then we need to stop being the prisoner of the past. So, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by stop being a prisoner of the past? What I mean by that is every time we stop to think about our story, every time we stop to think about the past, every time we stop to think about our traumas, every single memory that we have of the past is like code that gets typed into the brain. Every single one of those memories, once they're accessed, actually creates a physical reaction in the body. Every thought is a code. When I say code, what I mean is a lot of times in the work that I do, a lot of it is working with restructuring a lot of the past beliefs so that they can become healthier. We can reprogram memories. But when I tell somebody to access the original memory, if it's something negative, a lot of times all the person has to do is think about it and they'll feel teary, or their anger will come up. I can see their body posture all start to change just because they accessed a memory of the past. That is most of the time bad. Most of the time, what we're accessing are negative things, and our body is chemically responding to that because the brain can't tell the difference between a memory and the now. It puts us back physically into that. We think we're telling ourselves a story, and our brain is reading it as crisis mode. Our cortisol spikes, our immune system starts going down. We develop chronic pain. We're already living the crisis, and all we're doing is remembering what's already happened because our brain can't tell the difference between accessing that memory and the here and the now. This is super, super, super important when it comes to creating the life that we want, because every hero, every thriver, every person who's rebuilt their life had that one day when they said, no, this stops now. I'm tired of this. I refuse to negotiate with fear. I refuse to allow the terrorists of the past to make me sad today. And that in turn is what's going to recreate the future. You know how many people say things like, this always happens to me, or I always get screwed over at work. As soon as we think that thought, it triggers a chemical reaction in the body, and we respond accordingly. And that's why we end up repeating the same things over and over and over again. It's why women or men who are in a domestic violence situation, when they leave that relationship, they go right back into another one. Different face, same scenario. It's because that past coding is recreating the future. Every time we access the past, we're reinforcing those neural connections that end up generating the future for us. And that's why many times we're kind of doomed to repeat the past over and over and over again. There's a hard truth about creating a new future for yourself. The truth is, you cannot have the old you that belongs to the past and a new you in a thriving, successful future. They don't coexist. Chemically, programming, you cannot make a Word document be an Excel spreadsheet. They are not the same. They're both programs, but they are not the same. In order to harness your future and create your future, you have to burn the past down to the ground. I've done this. I think a lot of you, in a lot of ways, have burned a lot of your past behind, whether you did it on purpose or whether it was done to you. And that can actually really be a gift. A long time ago, I was doing a plant medicine ceremony with my shaman here. And it was one of the first times I had met him. And he had said that he had never met somebody like me. I assume he means white woman doing plant medicine. And he says, tell me your story. So I explained to him my story, coming from the high control religion until I got to the point where my life was destroyed. Everything was destroyed. I lost my religion. I lost my family. I lost my kids. I lost it all, and boom, gone. And when I got to that part of the story, he started to smile and he starts to shake his head. And after the destruction part of my story, I explained that, that's when I started, rebuilding my beliefs. What is it that I believe now? What do I want to create for myself? Because that was ashes. My old life was ashes. And he's sitting there and he's smiling and he's nodding his head. He's shaking his head and he goes, all shamans have to burn the past in order to create a new one. And this is coming from an indigenous shaman with no education, but neuroscience confirms that. As we have to delete the past, we have to come to this point where we say, no, the past was a journey. It is not my destination. I always use the example of a cross-country trip. Say you're going from Florida and you're driving to California. As you drive from Florida, you're going to go through some very, very small towns. You're going to go through Arkansas. You're going to go through Missouri. You're going to go through some poverty. You're going to go through some very small towns with not a whole lot of culture. You're going to go through some places that you wouldn't want to live. At some point in the journey, you're going to get to Colorado. And you're still on your way to California. But as you're right there in the middle of the country, neither the past of the journey dictates the past doesn't dictate the future. Just because you had to drive through Arkansas doesn't mean you're stuck there and you have to live there. It was part of the journey. And just because when you left Florida, you were determined to get to California, it doesn't mean you have to keep going to California. Here you are, you're in the middle of the country. You can go to Denver International Airport. You can get on a plane. You can go to Canada. You can go to Mexico. You can go to Europe. You could stop there and create a life there if that's great for you. The moment, the today, that is what determines where you're going tomorrow. It's critical that we realize that we can't have it both ways. We can't have the old life without it impacting and causing problems in the new life. You can't have a new life and be haunted by the past. Our stories, our excuses, the reasons, the whys, this is who I am, change is hard. We have to be reborn. It doesn't always have to be as dramatic as I did. Versions of us sometimes need to go away. So what version of us needs to be burned? Is it the procrastinator? Is it the people pleaser? Is it the follower? Is it the victim? Because as long as we have that coding in our brain, it's going to create those chemical reactions, which is going to affect the future. This is science. The neuroscience has proved that the brain cannot tell the difference between memory and imagination. So why is it that we spend so much time in memory and we're not using the imagination? Part of stopping being the prisoner of the past is stopping the use of memory and activating the use of imagination. Now, there's tons of work that we can do that can recode the past, and that is hugely beneficial. But it still ends up being like using the left hand and not the right hand, or using the right hand and not the left hand. We need to harness our imagination to create the future. If you can't see it, you can never have it. When are you going to book your plane ticket? Well, don't you have to know where you're going before you can book the ticket? Harnessing the power of our imagination means that we need to take a minute. First of all, where are we going? What do you want? As we do this, as we harness the imagination, as we harness our creativity, understand that your brain doesn't know the difference between your imagination and a memory. Technically, neither are real. Both are just stored programs in your brain. So in order to create the future that we want, we need to activate our imagination. Sometimes what gets in the way of our imagination is our desire to be realistic. Well, that's not realistic. Or if I do this, then this is going to happen. If I go for my dreams, then it means I'm going to lose my family. Well, wait a second. That's using autopilot imagination. That is letting the primitive brain take over and make shit up. I am talking about being the commander of your own brain, because otherwise our brain is just on autopilot. It's taking snippets from the past and it's projecting it into the future. It's based on survival, because that's what the brain is wired to do, is help us survive. But the truth is, 99.9% of the day, we don't need survival skills. There is no demon coming out to stab us to death right this second. Right in the moment, we are fine. You are safe. You are fine. And we're using our imagination to make scenarios up about the future. It's creating that chemical response in us. And 99% of the time, that's not healthy either. If we're going to make things up about the future, make it up good. So this is going to take some work on your part, because most of us have stopped daydreaming. Most of us have stopped imagining. Most of us have stopped being creative. When you ask a little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're super quick to say, I'm going to be a cowboy. I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to be an explorer, right? When somebody asks an adult, what do you want to be now that you're grown up? They don't have an answer, because it's been a long time since they've thought about what they want. What kind of life could they create? So I would like to give you some homework. I would like you to activate your imagination on purpose, controlling your imagination instead of letting the imagination run wild with worst case scenarios. Take a pen and paper, take some crayons, take some inspirational books, and imagine a future that you love. I don't want you to think about, don't think about how can realistic, whoops. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. With the power of the imagination, then the brain starts doing things. If you think about it, as soon as you think something about the past, a sentence like, this always happens to me, and then it happens. What did you do to make that happen? Nothing. You did nothing to make that happen. All you had was the thought, and then it happened. We can use this on purpose to create a beautiful, brilliant life. But you can't have that beautiful, brilliant life if you can't imagine it. You can't have a beautiful, successful, thriving life of your dreams when you are a prisoner, when you are a hostage of something that happened 20, 30 years ago. You cannot change the past, but you can change the future, and the future starts using your imagination. What would you do if money were no object? What would you do if anything were possible? If you had that genie and 3 magic wishes, what would your life look like? What would you wish for? You might be a little rusty because a lot of times as we're thinking about the future, it's based on the past. This time I'm asking you to use your imagination based on your imagination, based on potential, based on what you could do. And again, stop being a prisoner of the past. So the prisoner says, I can't have that because I don't have an education. The prisoner says, oh, I can't do that because I'm 50. The prisoner says, I can't do that. Blech. Stop being a prisoner of the past. This exercise is going to help you harness the future, and we'll go through how that happens later. But step number 1 is you have to have a destination. And you cannot have a destination if you're handcuffed to the disasters and the traumas of the past. That is the trip from Florida to California. That is something that you drove through. It is what you went through. It is not who you are, and it is not where you're going. Now we're talking about creating a destination that's worth going to, that's worth having. Okay, so that's going to be your homework. Your homework is going to be to use your imagination and create a life that you would love to live. And you are going to take that prisoner of the past and you are going to leave them in the past, because otherwise they're the ones that are driving, not you. Okay, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to share this video. Please leave the comments. I love the comments. The comments are what keep me going. And I will talk to you tomorrow.